Have you ever looked at someone who effortlessly wakes up at 5 a.m. every single day and wondered if they know something you don't? We are constantly told that the early bird gets the worm, that waking up before the sun is the ultimate shortcut to success, wealth, discipline, and elite performance. Scroll through social media and you'll see CEOs, athletes, and influencers proudly showcasing their perfectly structured morning routines, almost as if the secret to life is hidden somewhere between 4:30 and 7 a.m. And slowly, without even realizing it, a belief starts forming in your mind: if you're not waking up early, you're falling behind. But what if that belief is incomplete? What if waking up early is not a universal success formula, but a deeply personal psychological pattern shaped by biology, personality, and environment? And what if, for some people, the obsession with waking up early is not just discipline, but something much more complex happening beneath the surface? To understand that, we need to separate myth from mechanism. Because the truth is, consistent early rising is not just about motivation or willpower. It is influenced by a combination of psychological traits, neurochemical rewards, and something most people completely ignore: your genetic chronotype. And once you start breaking it down, you realize that waking up early is not inherently superior. It's just one behavioral strategy among many. And like any strategy, it has both advantages and hidden trade-offs. Let's start with one of the most overlooked psychological drivers behind early rising: the need for environmental control. Think about what the world feels like at 4:30 or 5 a.m. It's quiet, there are no incoming messages, no demands, no noise, no unpredictability. For many people, especially those who are mentally overstimulated or prone to anxiety, this time of day offers something extremely rare: certainty. When you wake up before the rest of the world, you temporarily remove external chaos. You create a controlled environment where everything feels manageable. For some individuals, this isn't just a productivity hack, it's a form of psychological regulation. It's a way to get ahead of the day before the day has a chance to overwhelm them. Now, that doesn't mean every early riser is anxious or avoiding something, but for a subset of people, early waking becomes a structured defense against unpredictability. By organizing the first few hours of the day with precision, workouts, planning, journaling, deep work, they create a sense of control that carries forward. It's not just about doing more, it's about feeling stable, and that distinction matters. But here's where things start to get more layered. When psychologists study personality using frameworks like the Big Five model, early risers tend to score higher on a trait called conscientiousness. This trait is associated with discipline, reliability, goal orientation, and long-term planning. In many ways, it's one of the strongest predictors of success across different domains. Highly conscientious individuals are more likely to follow through, delay gratification, and stick to routines even when they don't feel like it. And naturally, waking up early aligns well with this trait. However, like every psychological strength, conscientiousness has a shadow side. When it becomes extreme, it can turn into rigidity. Instead of flexibility, you get strict adherence to routines. Instead of healthy discipline, you get self-imposed pressure. And this is where something called productivity guilt starts to appear. For some early risers, missing their morning routine doesn't just feel like a small disruption, it feels like failure. Sleeping in isn't interpreted as recovery, it's interpreted as weakness. Their self-worth slowly becomes tied to how productive they are, especially in those early hours. And over time, this creates a fragile system where rest feels undeserved unless it's earned through effort. Now let's address something that rarely gets talked about openly: the subtle psychological reward behind waking up early. Society has, for a long time, attached moral value to sleep patterns. Waking up early is often associated with discipline, ambition, and responsibility. Sleeping late, on the other hand, is frequently labeled as laziness or lack of direction. Whether we consciously agree with this or not, these associations are deeply ingrained. So when someone consistently wakes up at 5 a.m., there's an internal narrative that can develop: a quiet sense of being ahead. Not necessarily in an arrogant or obvious way, but in a subtle psychological sense. It feels like you've already won a part of the day before others have even started. And that feeling can be motivating. It can reinforce the habit, but it can also create comparison. It can make rest feel like falling behind, even when your body genuinely needs it. This is why you often see people publicly sharing their early morning routines. It's not always about showing off, it's about reinforcing identity. I am the kind of person who wakes up early. And identity-based habits are powerful. Once something becomes part of how you see yourself, you will defend it, repeat it, and sometimes even exaggerate its importance. Another important layer here is isolation, but not in a negative sense. Humans are social by nature, constantly influenced by the presence, expectations, and opinions of others. But early morning hours provide something unique: voluntary isolation. A space where you are temporarily free from social input. No one is asking anything from you. No one is watching. No one is interrupting. For many people, this is incredibly valuable. It allows for deep focus, reflection, and uninterrupted work. But for others, it can also become an escape. It's easier to handle structured tasks in isolation than to deal with emotionally complex situations later in the day. It's easier to control a routine than to navigate relationships, uncertainty, or conflict. So while early mornings can be productive, they can also, in some cases, become a controlled environment people retreat into. Now let's shift into the biological side, because this is where most self-help advice completely falls apart. Your body operates on something called a circadian rhythm, a 24-hour internal clock that regulates sleep, energy, alertness, and hormone release. And within this system, each person has a chronotype. Some people are naturally early types, often called larks. Others are naturally late types, often called owls. This isn't a mindset, it's biology. If you are naturally wired to feel alert in the evening and sleepy later at night, forcing yourself to wake up at 5 a.m. every day is not discipline, it's misalignment. And chronic misalignment comes with consequences: elevated cortisol levels, reduced cognitive performance, mood instability, and long-term fatigue. On the other hand, if you are naturally an early type, waking up early doesn't feel like effort. It feels normal. That's why some people make it look effortless. They're not fighting their biology. This is one of the biggest misconceptions in modern productivity culture. We see someone thriving with a 5 a.m. routine and assume we need to copy it. But what we don't see is their internal wiring. What works for them might actively harm you. There's also a neurochemical component to consider. When you wake up early and complete a challenging task, like a workout, deep work session, or cold exposure, your brain releases dopamine. This isn't just a pleasure chemical. It's tied to motivation, reward prediction, and reinforcement. When the brain associates early waking with achievement, it starts building a loop. Wake up early, complete task, feel rewarded, repeat behavior. Over time, this loop becomes stronger. And for some individuals, the difficulty of waking up early actually enhances the reward. The harder it feels, the more satisfying it is to overcome it. This is why some people become extremely attached to their morning routines. It's not just about the outcome, it's about the internal reward cycle. However, like any system, this has limits. If someone front-loads too much effort into the early part of the day, they can experience energy crashes later. Mental fatigue accumulates. Decision-making quality drops. So while the morning may feel incredibly productive, the overall day might not be as balanced as it appears. So where does this leave us? It leaves us with a much more nuanced understanding. Waking up early is not inherently good or bad. It's not a universal success formula. It's a tool, and its effectiveness depends entirely on the person using it. For some people, it aligns perfectly with their biology and personality. It enhances focus, improves structure, and creates a sense of control. For others, it becomes a source of stress, guilt, and misalignment. The difference is not discipline. The difference is compatibility. The real question you should be asking is not, should I wake up at 5 a.m.? The real question is, when do I function best? When are you most alert, most creative, most focused? Because success is not built by copying someone else's schedule. It's built by optimizing your own. So the next time you see someone proudly talking about their 4:30 a.m. routine, don't immediately assume they've unlocked a secret you haven't. What you're seeing is a combination of personality traits, learned behaviors, biological alignment, and reinforcement loops. It works for them. That doesn't mean it will work for you. And more importantly, it doesn't need to. Because the goal is not to win a race that starts at sunrise. The goal is to build a life that actually works with your mind, your body, and your reality. And sometimes, the most productive thing you can do is not wake up earlier, but understand yourself better.